Second Lieutenant William de Both, West Point's newest contribution to the Dandy Fifth, had the distinct feeling that he was entering a hostile camp as he led H Troop across the wooden bridge and approached Camp Gila. As he drew nearer to the agency office, the figures in front of it appeared no friendlier. Good God, were they all Indians? After guarding the 16 hostiles the 30 miles from Fort Thomas, Lieutenant de Both had had enough of Indians for a long time. Even with the H Troopers riding for sides, he couldn't help glancing nervously back to the 16 hostiles, and expecting trouble to break out at any moment. After 30 miles of this, he was hardly prepared to face the gaunt, raw-boned Travisin and his sinister-looking band of Apache scouts. His fellow officers back at Fort Thomas had eagerly informed de Both of the character of the formidable Captain Travisin. In fact, they painted a picture of him with bold, harsh strokes, watching the young lieutenant's face intently to enjoy the mixed emotions that showed so obviously. But even with the exaggerated tales of the officers' mess, de Both could not help learning that this unusual Indian agent was still the best army officer on the frontier. 3 months out of the point, he was only too eager to serve under the best. Leading his troop across the square, he scanned the ragged line of men in front of the office and on the Ramada. All were armed, and all stared at the approaching column as if it were bringing cholera instead of 16 unarmed Indians. He halted the column and dismounted in front of the tall, thin man in the center. The lieutenant inspected the man's faded blue chambray shirt and grey trousers, and unconsciously adjusted his own blue jacket. "My man, would you kindly inform the captain that Lieutenant de Both is reporting? I shall present my orders to him." The lieutenant was brushing trail dust from his sleeve as he spoke. Travisin stood with hands on hips looking at de Both. He shook his head faintly, without speaking, and began to twist one end of his dragoon mustache. Then he nodded to the foremost of the Chiricahwas, and turned to Barney Fry. "Barney, that's Pillo, isn't it?" "Ain't nobody else," the scout said matter-of-factly. "And the skinny buck on the paint is Asesino, his son-in-law." Travisin turned his attention to the bewildered lieutenant. "Well, mister, ordinarily I'd play games with you for a while, but under the circumstances, when you bring along company like that, we'd better get down to the business at hand without the monkey shines. Fry, take care of our guests. Lieutenant, you come with me." He turned abruptly and entered the office. Inside, de Both pulled out a folded sheet of paper and handed it to Travisin. The captain sat back, propped his boots on the desk, and read the orders slowly. When he was through, he shook his head and silently cursed the stupidity of men trying to control a powder keg situation 2,000 miles from the likely explosion. He read the orders again to be certain that the content was as illogical as it seemed. Headquarters, Department of Arizona. In the field, Fort Thomas, Arizona. August 30th, 1880. E.M. Travisin, Captain 5th Cave Reg. Camp Gila Subagency. Camp Gila, Arizona. You are hereby directed, by order of the Department of the Interior, Bureau of Indian Affairs, to place Pillo, and the remnants of his band, numbering 15, on the Camp Gila White Mountain Reservation. The Bureau compliments you on the remarkable job you are doing, and has confidence that the 16 hostile Chiricahwas, placed in your charge, will profit by the example of their White Mountain brothers, and become peaceful farmers. The bearer, Second Lieutenant William de Both, is, as of this writing, assigned to Camp Gila as second in command. Take him under your wing, Eric. He's young, but I think he will make a good officer. Emon Collier, Brigadier General Commanding. He looked up at the lieutenant, who was gazing about the bare room, taking in the table, the roll-top desk along the back wall, the rifle rack, and 3 straight chairs. They both looked no more than 21 or 2, pink-cheeked, neat, every inch a West Point gentleman. But already, after only 3 months on the frontier, his face was beginning to lose that expression of anticipated adventure, the young officer's dream of winning fame and promotion in the field. The 30 miles from Fort Thomas alone presented the field as something he had not bargained for. To Travisin, it wasn't a new story. He'd had younger officers serve under him before, and it always started the same way: take him under your wing. Teach him about the Apache. It was always the old campaigner teaching the recruit what it was all about. To Eric Travisin, at 28, only 7 years out of the point, it was bound to be amusing. The cavalry mustache made him look older, but that wasn't it. Travisin had been a veteran his first year. It was something that he'd had even before he came west. It was that something that made him stand out in any group of men. It was the strange instinct that made him wheel and draw his handgun when Gatito stole up behind him. It was a combination of many things, but not one of them did Travisin himself understand, even though they made him the youngest captain in Arizona because of it. And now another one to watch him and not understand. He wondered how long the both would last. He said, "Lieutenant, do you know why you've been sent here?" "No, sir." The both brought himself to attention. "I do not question my orders." Travisin was faintly amused. "I'm sure you don't, Lieutenant. I was referring to any rumors you might have heard." "And relax." The both remained at attention. "I don't make it a practice to repeat idle rumors that have no basis in fact." Travisin felt his temper rise, but suppressed it from long practice. It wasn't the way to get things done. He circled the desk and drew a chair up behind the both. "Here, rest your legs." He placed a firm hand on the lieutenant's shoulder and half forced him into the chair. "Mister, you and I are going to spend a lot of time together. We'll be either in this room or out on the desert with nothing to think about except what's in front of us. Conversation gets pretty thin after a while, and you might even make up things just to hear yourself talk. You're the only other regular army man here, so you can see it isn't going to be a parade grounds routine. I've been here for 3 years now, counting White Mountain Indians and making patrols. Sometimes things get a bit hot. Otherwise you just sit around and watch the desert. I probably don't look like much of an officer to you. That doesn't matter. You can keep up the spit and Polish if you want, but I'd advise you to relax and play the game without keeping the rule book open all the time. Now, would you mind telling me what in hell the rumors are at Thomas?" The both was surprised and disturbed. He fidgeted in his chair, trying to feel official. "Well, sir, under the circumstances. Of course, as I said, there is no basis for its authenticity, but the word is that Crook is being transferred back to the department to lead an expedition to the border. They say that he will probably ask for you. So I am being assigned here to replace you when the time comes. This is, of course, only gossip that is circulating about. Do you believe it?" "Sir, I don't even think about it." Travisin said. "You mean you don't want to think about it? Sitting by yourself at a godforsaken Indian agency with almost 250 White Mountains living across the street. Not to mention the scouts." He paused and smiled at the both. "I don't know, Lieutenant, you might even like it after a while. I accept my orders, Captain. My desires have nothing to do with my orders." But Travisin was not listening. Long strides took him to the doorway, and he leaned out with a hand against the door frame on each side. "Fry. Hey, Fry." The men of H Troop looked over to the office as they prepared to mount. Barney Fry left the sergeant and strode toward the agency office. "Come in here, Barney." The clatter of trotting horses beat across the quadrangle as Fry stepped up on the porch and entered the office. His short strides were slightly pigeon-toed, and he held his head tilted down as if he was self-conscious of his appearance. He looked to be in his early 20s, but, like Travisin, his face was a hard, bronzed mask, matured beyond his age. When he took off his grey wide-brimmed hat, thick, black hair clung close to his scalp, smeared with oily perspiration. "What do you think, Barney?" Fry leaned against the edge of the desk. "I think probably the same thing you do. Those Pashas aren't going to stay long at Gila even if we'd give them all the beef critters in Arizona." "You noticed there wasn't any women in the band?" "Yes, I noticed," Travisin answered. "They'll never learn, will they?" He looked at the both. "You see, Lieutenant, the Bureau thinks that if they separate them from their families for a while, the hostiles will become good little Indians, and make clothes out of their spencers, and grow corn to eat instead of drink. What would you do if some benevolent race snatched your women and children from you, and sent you to a barren rock pile over 100 miles away? And do you know why? For something you'd been doing for the past 300 years. For that simple but enigmatic something that makes you an Apache, and not a Navajo. For that quirk of fate that makes you a tiger instead of a Persian cat. Mister, I've got over 200 white mountains here raising crops, and eating government beef. I can assure you that they're not doing it by nature. And now they sent 16 Chiricahuas. 16 men with the smell of gunpowder still strong in their nostrils, and bloodlust in their eyes." Travisin shook his head wearily. "And they send them here without their women." They both cleared his throat before speaking. "Well, frankly, Captain, I don't see what the problem is. Obviously, these hostiles have done wrong. The natural consequence would be a punishment of some sort. Why pamper them? They're not little children." "No, they're not little children. They're Apaches," Travisin reflected. "You know, I used to know an Indian up near Fort Apache by the name of Skimitozin. He was an Araviper. One day he was sitting in the hut of a white friend of his, a miner, and they were eating supper together. Then, for no reason at all, Skimitozin drew his handgun, and shot his friend through the head. Before they hung him he said he did it to show his Araviper people that they should never get too friendly with the Blancos. The Apache has never gotten a real break from the whites. So Skimitozin wanted to make sure that his people never got to the point of expecting one, and relaxing. Mister, I'm here to kill Indians, and keep Indians alive. It's a paradox, no question about that, but I gave up rationalizing a long time ago. Most Apaches have always lived a life of violence. I'm not here primarily to convert them. But by the same token I have to be fair when they are fair to me." They both raised an objection. "I see nothing wrong with our treatment of the Indians. As a matter of fact, I think we've gone out of our way to treat them decently." He recited the words as if he were reading from an official text. Fry broke in. "Go up to San Carlos and spend a week or two," he said. "Especially when the government beef contractors come around with their adjusted scales, and each cow with a couple of barrels of Gila water in her. Watch how the Pash women try to cut each other up for a bloated cow belly." Fry spoke slowly, without excitement. Travisin said to the lieutenant, "Fry's not talking about one or two incidents. He's talking about history. You were with Pillo all the way up from Thomas. Did you see his eyes? If you did, you saw the whole story.